In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create a nice dashboard here, and it has a slightly of a mobile design dashboard that I use here, where we have nice buttons here. These are basically buttons. We have these values here. We're using font awesome as well, and we're going to use Bootstrap as well within here. We have these buttons here and all of these buttons, and they will not be functional, but the goal here is to build the design. So let's start to look how we can do this. So let's start to look on how we can create our simple dashboard with Chartjs and Bootstrap. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the template by having just the background and everything set, and we have this shape here like a mobile phone style. So to do this, we go to chartjs3.com, getting started, just get the border template here. Once you're on here, and by the way, you can find this link as well in the description box. Copy this chunk of code. And if you want to understand this code, you can watch this video here that explains it all. So then I'm going to just paste that in there, cut this out, put that in here, save, refresh. Alright, so now we have this here, but what we want to do eventually is to have a height. So for this height, I will make this height 800 pixels. So we go in here, and then we have here the width, but I want to have a height here set. So we say height. This will be 800 pixels. So once we have that, alright, that works. And then I want to change this, and this, because I'm using the iPhone 12 shape, that is, if you look at the dimensions, 19.5 by 9, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the dimension. So the width here will be this amount divided by 19.5 multiplied by 9, and you will get then the 369 value, which is a very symbolic value. Save that, refresh. Alright, so now we have this here. So now we have the basic template. Let's look at the image here now, what we need. Well, we're going to get a few things. We need font awesome here for the icons. And next what we have to do is make sure we have Bootstrap as well. So what I'm going to do now is, first of all, I'm going to get Bootstrap here. Once you're on bootstrap.com or getbootstrap.com, we're going to get the latest version, which is 5.2. Once we are in here, we can scroll down here and search for the official link. We have here these separated, but we only want the single item here, if I'm not mistaken. It is this one here up, which is the basic CSS. Let's grab that. And we can just put that in here. And next what we want to do is, of course, the JavaScript. We won't be using probably any of the JavaScript commands here, or very limited, but just in case. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'll just put that here at the bottom. Next, what I want to do is I want to go to font awesome, or at least I want to have the CDN.js item here, the JavaScript file. So I'm going to click here on this, and I'm just going to grab the oldest version of 4.7, which is a quite decent version. Has a lot of icons that we need, and that should be more than enough for our case. So once we have this selected here, let's grab this link tag. And then we're going to put that here above. Let's go all the way up, paste that in there, and now we are done with that. Alright, so we have all of this here now. The next thing what we want to do is, well, let's look at it. Let's look at our image. Let's work on this header here. Basically, we have three items. First of all, we want to have here a button. We have another button, and inside here, this is what we call a list item, because we want to have this one and just here something below. So let's start to work on these buttons, which are font awesome icons. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our div, that is our chart box. So within this chart box div, we're going to create another div. And this div class here, we can say here, this will be our display flex, or flex box, basically, the flex. And what is a display flex or flex box? Is basically the items that we can put them nice side by side. And this can be very useful for our case. So what we're going to do here, let's close that. And then what I want to do is, and I'm putting it here above on purpose, because we want to make sure that this chart is down here, somewhere in the center. And here, upper part, we have a decent amount of space here above. So what we're going to do here, first of all, let's make this, because we need to have them side by side, but we want to make sure that it will have a space between here. And if we look at the flex, we can click here on the behavior. I'm going to scroll down here, and what's the behavior that we need? We need this behavior here, which is the fourth item, which is justify context of content between. So we're going to put that in here, and once we did that one here, we can start to work with the item. So every span or every class or syntax will have this. So what we can do here now, I'll just call it here button. That's the one we need. And within the button, we can say a class. And this button, well, let's save this and then refresh here. We see here something. So we have here one part. So this is really the button itself. So let's put in another button as well, because we need two buttons. And then afterwards, this one will be at the beginning and the other one will be at the end. So let's say here, I'll put in this tag here and this one I'll put there. If I save that, we have two of those. Alright, so that works. But of course we want the font awesome. We want this arrow here. So we can look here in the font awesome icon. So you can say, I think this is chevron right or left. So let's say left arrow or left arrow left. Here we are. Let's grab this, put that in here, and that will be there. And then the next one would be, let's look at that. This will be the refresh button. So I guess that should be just something with that, with refresh. So I'm going to say here, refresh. Save this one here, refresh. Alright, so there we are. So we have these buttons, but if you look very carefully, these buttons are buttons, but they don't look like a button. They're basically link buttons. And that is of course the class for the button here. So first of all, we're going to say button, save, refresh. So now this looks already quite decent, to be honest. I think this is almost acceptable as well. I do like this design. But we need to make sure that text is muted. So we're going to say here, text muted. If I do that, there we are. It's like great. We can keep it like this, or what we could say is say btn.link. Then it becomes a link, but it's hard to notice here. So it's one or the other. You can select or choose your options here. Let's grab this, put that in here, save, refresh. So now we have both of them same here. Of course, we're missing still the center piece. So let's put in here now the center, and this is a unordered list. So we're going to say here, enter, and then what I'm going to say here, UL for unordered list. Let's close that, and then we have here a list item. And the reason why I'm using a list item here is basically I want to push it in the center like that. You can just put it in the center here, but I want to make sure that this here still stays in the alignment of it. So if you look here very carefully, you can see this is being pushed within the line height of the center, or to a certain extent, which is quite acceptable for me. So I'm going to use this item now. So what I'm going to say here, let's say a Bitcoin, and then I'm going to put in here a break. So what, and I guess what I should do here is the following. I'm going to put here this. I should give this as proper span, and this span should have a class design. This class design, we will call this our font weight bold. So if I save that, refresh, there we are. So we have this that looks quite decent. Let's see here. Alright, that looks acceptable. But we have to remove this disk here. So we're going to say here, in the unordered list, a class list dash unstyled. Save that, refresh, there we are. So next, what I want to do is I want to have something below here, as you can see here, but say here btn in a gray color. So what I want to do here is, well, we say enter, and let's make this small. So we say small span, and then we say here btn, or btc, sorry. Alright, that works, but I need to make sure we have an enter. So what we're going to do here, let's put in a break, save, refresh. Alright, then we're going to give this a text muted class, and then we're going to say here, alright, so once we have this here, I want to make sure that this has text muted, save, refresh. So we have this, but it should be center. So we're going to say here, I guess we can just say here, text center, or what is it, align text, I'm not sure. Text center, there we are, that works fine. I do notice here that I have a feeling that this one is not really that larger or smaller compared to the other one. We can double check that. here text muted, font size is that amount of M, and here font size is, I guess, 1 M. So it is slightly smaller, although it's hard to notice, but that's fine for now. Alright, so now we've done the top part here, except that should be a proper amount of padding or margin here. So let's work on that. So what I'm going to say here is the following. We're going to put it in here. I will say here margin top number 5. Save. So let's save this. We have now this padding here. Edit here. Alright. That looks decent. And probably we should have some bottom as well. Some space between to the next item. Alright. So I guess we could do that in here. We could say here we have this. Maybe say, well, I guess this should be fine, but maybe left and right. I'm not certain. Do we have more? Well, let's try that. And let's say here at least padding X number 3 to ensure that we have a forced amount of space. Alright. So while I have this, I do notice that probably by default there is something here. And probably I will remove that one. And the reason why I'm going to remove that is because you can see here, this becomes later on an issue with our canvas. Because our canvas will calculate that space there. So we're going to scroll up here and we're going to check here, that's the padding. I think this is the one. Let's comment this out. Like that. Save. Refresh. Alright. That is a bit better. So now we have this. What I want to do is the next item, which is basically the second, I guess the second div, where we have the amount, we have the icon, and then here we have the arrow down. So to do this, what we need here is basically a div and then another unordered list for this, and make sure that the space between this and that is consistent. For that, we're going to use again the flexbox. So let's scroll down and let's search for this. Alright, so this is all together, and I'm going to say a div. And let's give this an ID. I'll say this ID will be equal to, ID should be equal to second, let's call the second div. So once we have this, what we're going to do here is we want to make sure that we have this item here. So this div will consist of this icon. So let's give it a class, the second div class. What we're going to do here, or well, I thought about a flexbox. I'm not certain about it right now because I think the flexbox might be an issue. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, well, I guess we can just make an icon. Let's put in here the items itself. So we have a visual, the icon, and we need here this unordered list. So we're going to say here the icon, and the icon, I'm just going to grab this default icon that we used here. Let's put that like that, a bit more organized. Grab this, and we're going to say here, and what is the icon? It's a Bitcoin icon. So I'm not sure what the Bitcoin icon is, or you can use anything else, any icon you want. And I'm going to use the BTC because it's right now the sample that I'm using. So okay, that is BTC here. So let's grab this BTC, save, refresh. Alright. Then I want to maximize this. Font Awesome has a special command to maximize the item. So it's a Font Awesome, which is FA, dash, and then 2x to multiply the size by 2. And that looks quite decent. Let's look at that. Alright, that is nice. Next, what I want to do is here the list item, and I already can see that we need some padding at the left and right. So let's grab this padding here. I'm going to put this padding already in there. Alright. Next, what we need is the unlisted item, or UL, or unordered item, sorry. And most likely will be copy of this. So I'm going to grab this here. And let's going to see what we need here. We're going to put it in there. Let's paste that in there. And we're going to save that and just see how that works. Alright, so that is of course not what we want. And we have to double check later on what's going on here. First of all, I'm going to remove this, save, refresh. Alright, that's interesting. You can see it doesn't really align properly. What we need to do here, and that's probably the reason why, is we need to have it aligned as a inline style block. So that's still within line, but it's considered a block, so it's going up and down, or at least we can put a second line in there. So we're going to say display inline dash block, save, refresh. Alright, that starts to look slightly better. So next what we need to do here is, because you can see here there should be some padding. If I look at that, there should be some padding here between those two. And you can see here the alignment of this is perfect with our text at the bottom. So it does show already something here. Well, let's put in the number. Let's say a $sign. And then what we could do here, probably remove the bold from this. And then we're going to put in another span. Let's put the span here. And then we're going to say here, this would be 21 or any other value depending on what kind of stock you're using. What I want to do here is a class, and I want to make sure that this has a bigger font size. If I refresh this, you can see here the font size is just too small. I want to highlight that with the price, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do here, font size, we say font size fs dash number 2, meaning it's twice the size of its original shape. Alright, so we have this one here, and that looks slightly better. Next, what we want to do here, I guess it's already, because of such a big size, it makes it look like it's bold. Next one is this one here. You can see here that is a arrow down and then minus 1% or anything that we will have. So we're going to do that one. I'm going to say here, we have the break, so that makes us already fine. Let's make sure that that is already done. What I want to do here is, I guess we can just copy, or this one here. We can adjust that by text danger. And then in here we need the icon, and the icon should be arrow down. So if I'm not mistaken, we have here above the arrow left. So I guess we can just copy this and say arrow down. Font awesome dash arrow down. And that should be in here. We're going to put that in there, and we're going to say here arrow down, save, refresh. Alright. And we have it already in a nice red color. And then we say here minus 1% or whatever you want here. So what we could do here is, after that, I guess we can just say a dash, and then we say here minus 1%. Do that. There we are. And you can see here, I have a feeling, oh, I guess that's just the image itself, that the font size is consistent on this. So this is all fine. And we could even change this, because I think that would be more practical to have a slightly bigger size. So what we could do here is maybe a span. Small has a tiny smaller size compared to the span. So if I do this one here, save, refresh, although it's hardly noticeable, but that might be decent. So we have this one here all together, and we could say here then this should be then in this case, oh, not like that. I'm going to copy this and put the color in here, save that, refresh. Alright, so now we have this here, and I guess here we could do as a tiny padding right or padding left. In this case, I'll just give the icon a padding, but I will make sure the icon doesn't have a padding on this side. This will be aligned with here above, so it will only be padding here. Or maybe that should be on the unordered list. Let's give this unordered list a padding of start, because I want to have it on the left side, and let's say here 1. Save that, refresh. You can see here, I guess we could make this padding 2 or 3. Oh, hold on, what did I get here? Padding start, yes, that's correct. Let's do 3. Is that decent? I guess that's quite decent. Alright, so that's acceptable here, and I realize I wanted these two all nicely aligned, but I noticed that this one is not really that aligned. So let's double check that one. What's going on there? Or what am I missing? We have this padding here, the button, and I guess if I open up developer tab, we can just check this. I guess it's the padding on the button itself. So the padding on the button should be probably padding -0. That there would be nicely aligned. So that's what I'm going to do here. Say padding 0, but then if I do this, I need to do it as well on the other button, on the refresh button, so they're both aligned. So on the button here, save, there we are. Go there, that's alright. Okay, so now we have this here, and maybe we could even do a padding here on this side. It's one or the other, it doesn't matter so much. So we have this here. Next one is, let's start to work now because we're done here with the upper part. Let's work on the chart itself. So let's continue on, and now let's work on this specific area where we can create a simple chart. And I realized that maybe I should have these values in here up and down, but I will leave that out for now, and probably I will make a separate video for that where you can add up with a custom plugin the values in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a line chart, and we already have a default chart in here, but this line chart needs to have a few items, or at least we need to remove a few items. The legend needs to be removed, and we need to remove all the scales on the Y scale and on the X scale. So let's start to do that one. So let's scroll down here. We have this here, and let's rename this to a line chart and convert this into a line chart. Save that, refresh this one, of course, and then what we have here is this. Alright, so I'm going to create a simple simple background for this, and I realize maybe a gradient would be nicer, but that's alright for now. So what we're going to do here, we're going to grab a color. In this case, I'll just grab the red color and remove everything else, and I will just put it here as well, but this will be a solid red color. Save, refresh. Alright, we have this, but our background is not showing yet. Let's do that one. So I put a comma, and I'm going to say here fill equals true, save, refresh. Alright, that works. What I want to do is, you can see here this line, and let's make this line elastic, so we should have a curved line. Comma here, I'm going to say attention equals 0.4. Save that, refresh. Alright, next, these point radius and the hit radius should be removed. So there's a comma here, say point radius 0, and then hit radius 0, save, refresh. Alright, that looks nice. Next, let's remove the legend. So you're going to scroll down here. I'm going to say here plugins, then say here legend, and we're going to say here display equals false, removing the legend. Save, put a comma here, and then save, refresh. Alright, that works. Finally, I'm going to remove all of these items here and the grid lines. So to do this, what I need to do here is, let's do the Y scale first. Put a comma here, and then I'm going to say your grid. And within the grid, I'm going to say your display equals false. Save that, refresh. As you can see here, now the grid is being removed. Next thing what I want to remove is the borders here, and I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but these are one of these borders, which is the scale border. So we're going to say here draw border equals false, save, refresh. You might notice it now that it's slightly lighter because there is still a grid of the X scale being on here, because the X scale is this line here with these grid lines, and then including this one here. So next I want to remove is the ticks, but also the space here. So let's do the space first. Enter. I'm going to say here draw ticks equals false, save, refresh. So as you can see here, now the space is being removed, but then I have to remove this item here, comma, ticks, and then here display equals false to remove the tick labels. Alright, that works. Next one here, exactly the same at the bottom. For that, all we can do is here, we're just going to copy this. I'm going to put here enter, X, put all of these in, put a comma here, save, refresh. Alright, that looks quite nice, and this should normally be gradient. I'll make that in the next video. So we have this here, and I guess those labels here, that we at least understand what is the value, because right now we can't say what is truly the value of it. It might be 21,000, or this might be 21,000, but it's not clear what it really is. And then especially what is the highest value here. I have no idea, but this could be probably the double of this. Anyway, that will be in another video. So now we have a chart working, and it looks nice here. What I want to do is I want to have here these buttons here nicely aligned at the bottom. So I'm going to scroll here up. We're going to work with the next div. So we basically created here now the canvas, and then I guess here now a new div, and let's call this div ID. And this div ID will be the third div. Alright, so within here, what we're going to do now is basically create a flex box again, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons here, and these buttons, eventually what we want to do is when we click on the day, we'll show the day values, weeks, etc, etc. However, those buttons will have no functionality for now. We're just going to work on creating the design of it. So we're going to say here, first of all, let's put in a button. That would be nice. So say a button, and I'm going to give it a class, and this class here will be btn, and then we say here btn small, and then next maybe btn success for the color. So if I have this, I will save this one, and then we go back here, we have this. Alright, so that starts to work, but we need to have a text here, and we will need to have some padding on the left and the right as well, because this one here didn't have any padding. That was the reason why we didn't put any padding on the entire div here, because it would impact this here. So what we're going to do here is 2 items. First of all, here class, let's call it here padding, I guess 3, and this padding 3 would refer to the top, bottom, left and right, and that is fine for us because we want to have it everywhere. And let's say here this will be D, save, refresh. Alright, so now we have this one here, and that's quite decent. Let's put in a few more. I'm going to put in 5 more items. And there we are. Let's say this one will be all or everything, and then this will be year, 6, month, and week, for example. Oh, week, save, refresh. Alright, so we get these here. That looks quite decent. What I do want here is maybe to maximize the size a little bit, and let's make this a padding so it will be slightly equal. So say padding x equals 3 on both sides, left and right, so on the horizontal level basically. Put them on all, save, refresh. Alright, that looks slightly better, but then what we want to do is we need to have a flex box here so it will be equally divided with the space between here. So what I'm going to say here, class this, we say dflex, and the dflex we can say here justify content between. If we save that, refresh, alright, we got that one here. And then if we look at our image here, final item is the border that we want to put in, because we have the space up, down, and it's been nicely evenly proportioned. That's the right term. So we're going to say here border bottom. So we say border and the bottom, save, and then here refresh. There we are. So I have this gray color here. This could be any other color, but gray is, I guess, quite decent. So then we have here these buttons, and I realize we have a lot of white space here, and we could do some more things, but once you understand what we're doing here, you probably figure out how we're going to do all of these other items. So now it's time to do the final item, which is basically the buy and sell button, which is probably the easiest one of the two, of all of them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create another div ID, and then let's make sure we put it just after the third ID. So we say div ID, and then I'll just give this the name for. And in here, let's see here, this class, well, probably what we need is here 2 buttons, and I guess we could just put in here a class of the flex box. So we say display flex, and then what we want to do here, and this should be also evenly proportioned. So we say here justify content between, and of course padding dash number 3. So there's a padding of top, bottom, left, and right, and then we're going to put in here the button. So button, let's give it a class. I say here btn, and this will be, if you look at the button here, this will be a large button compared to this. So we have a large button here, button 1 and button 2. So it's a btn dash lg, and this should be color. So it's a background bg, or sorry, not bg, or btn dot success. So let's copy this, put that in there, and this will be danger for the red color, and then we say here buy, sell, or you could do the other way around, I guess. Maybe sell is for red and buy is for green, something like that, or one or the other, I guess, doesn't matter. Buy and sell, because here you make money, this will cost you money. That would make more logical sense. Anyway, I want to make sure that there's a width, a full width, so we say here width 100 if I save that. There you are. Alright, so we make sure that this is here as well, equal. And then what we're missing here is some padding. So what I will do here, give it a simple padding, but I will indicate the padding left and right here. And I'm sure in Bootstrap there's probably an easier way to do it, but I'll just do it like this for now. So I'm going to say here, or that's not even padding. So let me explain why. Padding would be extending within the button borders. That would mean it will extend the color of that part. So I don't want that. I want to have a white space here, so I need to have margin. So it's outside of the borders. So margin, and then let's say here will be the ending point, and let's say two padding. So if I refresh this, you can see here it moves away now from this point. And I want to do here, this will be the starting margin, moving it away as well. With two points, and I'm not sure how many pixels that is. That is maybe about 4 or 5 pixels. I say here, but this will be start. Margin start, so that this part here will be extended as well. There we are. And now we have basically a quite decent looking design here. And that's basically how you can make a simple dashboard design on your mobile phone here. And of course, we could do a lot more, having all these functionalities here. We could refresh, we could go back here and maybe even make this dynamic, but that will be another time.